Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to do something a little bit different, more of a functional print. I've had this fiber laser for going on almost 2 years now maybe, and let me tell you, it is a money maker. It's great. Haochin makes fantastic equipment, and they've partnered up with Tico laser enclosures, and I've really enjoyed having this laser enclosure, but there's one thing that I want to improve, and that is the gap. So we have this gap that runs along the top. It is also present down here at the bottom, and that gap is also present where the two doors come together. I want to create a seal for this door here, and then since these are moving, this door will compress the seal here, but up here at the top I'm going to need more of a flap so that as these doors open, that flap just kind of covers it up. Now I'm not trying to make this airtight. Obviously that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. We do have fans at the top of the enclosure, and then we have this brush system here in the back because the fiber laser head is on a motorized Z-axis, so that rides up and down. The first order of business is going to be to design a little part that will ride in the 2020 aluminum extrusion slots here, and then we'll make a flap. So step one is to go to the computer, and we'll do this work in Fusion, or formerly known as Fusion 360, and see what we can come up with. Here we are in Autodesk Fusion, and I have a few drawings, so let me explain. The first one, this part here, I just went online and searched for 20 by 20 aluminum extrusion, and I found this STL. And I designed this part based on these dimensions, and it turns out this is slightly different than what I have, so I had to go back and redesign it. So I've got this part, and what I've decided to do is print this out, this shape. These two halves will extrude together, and it will be printed in PETG, and it's got this little slot here, or this little channel that's not going to be there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that body on. So that will ride inside the channel, and then it's got this little circular groove in it for the flap. And the flap, I'm going to use PEBA. Now, if you've been on my channel for a while, you've probably seen that I did a PEBA review a while back, but I had Sainsmart asked me if I'd be interested in using their product. And I thought, yeah, I've got this project that I've been thinking about doing. And so for this next part, I am going to be using Sainsmart's PEBA to print out this flap and the gasket, because PEBA, if you don't know, has better compression and it returns to form better than TPU. So I think I'm going to benefit from that characteristic. So here is the part that the flap, if you will. This is going to be the first thing that we print out. So this cylinder portion here will ride in the channel. So let's get this all sliced and sent to the printer. Oh, now one of the very powerful aspects of using something like Fusion, it's a parametric based CAD system, and you can use parameters. And so what I've done is I've defined some parameters that all of these drawings are based on. The primary one here is length. So I can change this value here. Right now it's set to 25.4 millimeters, which is 1 inch. And I know I'm going to need about 16.5 inches on the top and bottom for this flap cover. And I'm going to divide that up just because of the size of the printers. And I'm going to use 2 different printers to print this. So if I make this 203.2, that equates to 8 inches. And as you saw there in the background, once I change that value, I now have 8-inch parts. So my flap is 8 inches long and my channel slot is 8 inches long. And now we'll send those to the printer, and then we can put them together and then put them into the enclosure. Let's talk about printing PEBA really quick. So here's the Sainsmart website, and this is the page. And hey, look, looks like you can, at least right now, you can enter your email and get a code for $10 off, which will make this filament even more affordable. One thing I will note is that they actually ship 1 kilogram spools. The last manufacturer of PEBA that I reviewed, I noted that I believe their their spools were like 0.75 kilograms. So because it printed the same amount using less weight, they gave you less. But it looks like Sainsmart is doing the 1 kilogram spools. It's not inexpensive, but it does have some unique properties. So most of the time you see this, how it's, very bouncy. And in my last review, I printed some balls and did the bounce test, and indeed it was quite a bit bouncier than anything else I had ever printed before. But again, this review or this video is not about bounciness per se. It's about the ability for it to return from compression. So that's what here, yeah, this is kind of what we're looking at. This is what I'm banking on, is that the PEBA will come back into shape for this gasket, and it's not just going to get compressed and stay compressed and no longer do what I need to do. But talking about printing PEBA, we have, if we click on this resource down here at the bottom, you have the ability to download this profile, and then I can import that into Bambu Studio, which is what I'm going to use or what I have used. And then they also have some sample models here that you can download as well. So you've got a tennis ball, a pillow, an insole, and the basketball. And then they've got some tips here for printing the PEBA. So let's fire up Bambu Studio and we'll get these things printing. Here we are in Bambu Studio, and let's show you how to import that filament profile. So if we come up here to File and then Import Configs folder here, and there is the Sainsmart 90A PEBA Basics. And if you do that, it will pull in a A1 profile for a 0.4 nozzle, and then the P1S it pulls in 0.4 and 0.6. So I'm going to say no to all because I've already done that. And we'll switch over here, and I've got these are the slots, and I'm going to print those on the P1S, and like I said, those are just being printed out of PETG. But over here on the H2D, which is what I have set up for the Sainsmart PEBA, I am printing with their profile. Now, you just heard me mention that it only brings in profiles for the P1S and the A1. What I did is I just opened up a separate instance of Bambu Studio, and on, let's say here on the P1S, I can see that I have this filament profile down here, and then I just kind of cut and paste and just duplicated it over on my H2D and then saved that as a new profile. I'll see if there's a way, I may put this up on Makerworld. Now that we have our profile loaded and everything is ready, let's go ahead and send this to the printer and we'll print out 4 more. Here we have our first print that was completed on the Bambu Lab H2D, and these were actually printed a while ago, which is why it's so easy to remove. But I've got 4 8-inch pieces for the flap, and over here on the P1S, let me turn the light on there, I've got 4 of the slots, and of course using these cryo grip plates, they, even though this has been sitting cold for probably over 12 hours, they're still pretty well adhered on here. But now we've got these parts, so we'll put it all together and we'll do the first half of the slot solution. When I was doing my initial prototyping, you can see here I just made these little short pieces, and the little slot, the little spherical portion there, or circular portion, the tube, fits in the slot. It slides in pretty easily. However, when you start getting into these longer runs, these 8-inch pieces, you can get it to start, but it's gonna, the friction pretty quickly is gonna come to the point where it's really hard to slide that in. So what I have found works the best is to simply place it in position where you want it to be, and then to just use a pair of pliers. And these are just some Craftsman pliers that I've had for years, but as you can see, when you apply pressure, it applies kind of evenly, and so just simply squishing that in there and then running down the length of the channel and pushing that in yields a pretty good result. So here's a finished piece. As you can see, I've run the entire way, And now that is ready for installation. All right, we have these assembled, and so now it's just a matter of sliding them in place. And I'll just get a little Allen wrench or something and push that in the rest of the way. All right, with that first piece, or the first 4 pieces installed, I just need to print out 4 more to cover the second half of this gap. I was thinking it was going to take a little more, like 8.5 inches, and so it wouldn't be hard to make new lengths with that parametric design, but it looks like 8-inch pieces are actually going to be more than enough. Moving right along to the next phase of this project. So right there in between those 2 handles, you can see my test fit for the gasket. Hopefully you can get a sense for the reason that I'm doing this, the main reason that I'm doing this. I do a lot of brass coins, and I notice that, you know, I'm getting some escaped brass dust. It's been manifesting around the shop, and I just wanted to contain that. Now that we have that little test piece done, I'm going to go ahead and print some for the full length of this door. So I was having some issues with the PEBA coming up off the plate on those long prints, long length prints like you see here. This one is 11 inches long. This is the gasket, and so I went with a different routing method for the TPU. I printed these little standoffs here, and it's enough of a low friction path that it seems to be working well. So I'll put a link for this little kit if you happen to have the H2D. It's a pretty quick little print. You got these little standoffs here. There's another piece in the back, and then I've got my PEBA back there just feeding into the TPU slot in the back of the printer. And things are working very well, printing quite nicely, and I'm not having any of that lifting issue that I was having before. The gasket is now installed, the full length of the door, and it is fitting nicely. Like I said, I know this little magnetic closure clasp isn't doing a ton of compression here, but it is it's fitting the gap nicely, and I know that it's not going to, with the amount of compression that it is receiving with the properties of the PEBA, it's going to continue to seal that gap. So now all of the places where light or exhaust could escape are now well sealed, and everything is looking great, except for this little gap right here. I'm probably gonna need to fix that a little later, but there we go. Nice. I was even able to use one of my little test pieces there, that little 1-inch strip, put that down at the bottom, and seal off that final gap. So perfect. Well, folks, there you have it. Thanks again to Sainsmart for sending out this filament for me to try in this gasket project for my fiber laser enclosure. It really worked well. There are plenty of other things that you can do with this filament. Like I said, this stuff, it is very bouncy. It's very resilient, and I want to know what you would make with a filament such as this. Please let me know down in the comments. As always, I would appreciate it if you would take a moment and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and hit that notification bell so you know when I drop new content. Thanks once again for spending some time with me here on the channel. Let's keep on learning, burning, printing, and growing together. Take care, everyone.